Welcome to the Rock is George podcast. I'm your host, George Dionne. Thanks for checking us out at anchor.fm/rockisgeorge or on one of the many podcasting platforms that we appear on, or maybe you're watching and listening on YouTube. Thanks to you as well. This is episode 33. It's with Frontiers music recording artist August Zadra. His debut album under the name Zadra is called Guiding Star. It was released on February 18th. August is most prominently known as being a member of Dennis Deyoung's touring band. If you're unfamiliar with Dennis, he was the lead singer of Styx during the height of their career. It's not to say that their career isn't still riding high, but you know what I meant. He sang Lady. August's first project for Frontiers Music came out in 2020. It's the self-titled release called Waiting for Monday, where he teams up with Rudy Cardenas. He was one of the finalists in season 6 of American Idol. August talks about that project and more. So without any further delay, here's August Zadra of Zadra. If I knew absolutely nothing about Zadra, how would you describe the band's music to me?
Okay, I would say it's a blend of classic material, so it's going to sound vaguely familiar in a way that isn't threatening. But it's forward leaning, and that the production is stronger. It's guitar driven rock with a lot of emphasis on vocals and vocal harmony. Keyboards are woven in to give it more of a rich sound. There are some deep cuts that in the spirit of things you're familiar with, but I think that you'll find it's a very fresh sound.
I'd agree with that, and I'd add that it's like 70s, 80s rock radio with modern production.
Yeah, I like that. I'm going to steal that.
And on February 18th, you released your debut album under the moniker Zadra. The name of the album is Guiding Star. You've always been a guitar player in a band. Why start your solo gig now?
It was a matter of confidence, and I had always shied away from. I think it's because I wanted to be a guitar, hero like every other kid that picked up a guitar. And so I always focused on that. And in case this was lost earlier, when I met Dennis Deyoung, he said, you know what your problem is? He said, you've always thought of yourself as a guitar player who sings when you should have been thinking of yourself as a singer who plays guitar. Then you probably would have been you'd still be nowhere. That's just the way the universe works. But when the opportunity came, via Jeff Soto, who's a dear friend of mine who was doing a bit of A&R type of work for Frontiers, to do a solo record, I said, I'm not really comfortable being that guy. I don't want to be the singer, songwriter, guitar player, all of that thing. I would rather, I've always been more of a tribal guy. I want to be in a band with guys. I always used to like going to rehearsal and sweat and turn it up loud and be with my friends. And that was our golf. We're making music. It's, we're not doing drugs. We're just having fun, making noise. I said, rather do something with a band. And Jeff knew of Rudy Cardenas, and I'd worked with Rudy and always wanted to do something with him with original music. Connected us. Waiting for Monday came to be. And I'm super happy with that record. But then when it circled around during the pandemic, Frontier said, well, what do you think about now? And I said, yes, I'm ready. Let's run with the ball. I really wanted to do this. And they connected me with Alessandro, who I can't overstate his importance on and his influence on the record too.
As I've said many times, Alessandro can do it all. He can write, he can produce, he can play multiple instruments. He's like the guy at Frontiers.
And he helped me greatly also with the technical end, in that we had a Zoom call and he walked me through, but I didn't have a home studio. So he walked me through all the gear I needed and he has a wonderful engineer, Andrea, who's also a fabulous guitar player. And he helped me with a lot of the technical stuff. He helped me get the gear together and how to use it. And I told Dennis this recently, that one of my proudest feelings about this recording is that a lot of I've done a fair amount of session work over the years, but it's always had an engineer in the room. But I did all the vocals except for one song at my house and all the guitars without somebody there. And some people are better at this than others, of course. It made me marvel more at the guys like Tom Scholz, who did everything and created a whole record in their basement. And he was very singular minded, but I really had hoped, but time and budget, everything constraints considered there, I wanted to work with, Jeff, to have him in the room with me, Jeff Soto, or somebody to say, hey, you know what you did there? Maybe try changing your tone in this, or extend that note longer. And I didn't have any of that. And I barely knew how to use the gear. So it's a miracle that Alessandro turned what I gave him into such a wonderful product. When some of the songs were fully, soup to nuts were done, gave them to him. I sent him like a boatload of snippets, pieces that some of them were from my iPhone recordings. Some were things I'd done elsewhere, but hadn't finished. And some of the things he came back with were, I'm not a strong lyric writer. So initially he wrote almost all the lyrics, and then we ended up tweaking everything. When he sang some of the original demos, I thought, what? Why? This should be your album, bro. You're amazing. It was intimidating, but he was very supportive and encouraging, and really, really inspired me to turn in some good work.
Is there a significance behind the album's title, Guiding Star? Because there is no song called Guiding Star.
It's referenced in a lyric. Is there a star? Is there a star to guide me, basically? But I'm glad you brought this up, because it's one of the things I'd like to talk about. First of all, I was born and raised in Alaska, and Polaris is the North Star. It's featured on the state flag. I wanted to name the album Polaris, and turned out, of course, every decent name's been used, and it was used by a band, some kind of metal band from Australia. The label told me this, and I said, well, okay, that's fine. And it's ironic because Polaris is only visible from the Northern Hemisphere, so the Australians have never seen it. But it still makes a good name. But so I kind of morphed that into, we couldn't actually use Polaris, we'll just call it the Guiding Star. And by no means did I mean to suggest that I feel that I'm a guiding star. But it was just a matter of having that as being, I wanted the album to be hopeful. I want it to be inspiring, and to have a kind of a positive energy. And I think we achieved that, but that's where it comes from. And you may notice on the album cover, there's a bit of the Aurora Borealis, and Frontiers' art department did an amazing job on the ideas I threw at them. So I'm very happy with it.
Well, let's talk a bit about the singles and kind of the stories behind them. What's the story behind Nothing More to Say?
I've got nothing more to say. Let the music do the talking. That song incorporates a lot of, first of all, I love gosh, I'm stammering for words now. The intro, which kind of suggests, I think, to a lot of listeners, and they've commented, it's got kind of a Mr. vibe, that pattern that sets up the song. And that kind of suggests perhaps that it's going to be something of a late 80s, early 90s. It's got some of that coming at you. This was me trying to go big with almost a Lou Gramm kind of vibe. He's one of my vocal heroes. And I should say that Lou Gramm, Steve Walsh, Joe Turner, and then all of those guys that are in that same field, basically. But I just love that kind of singing. I love the song. This is one that I collaborated heavily with Alessandro on, and it has, the only thing I was hesitant about was that it's got the shortest solo on the record, and I kind of want to make a statement as a guitar player as well. But and it's a 5.5 minute long song. I thought, you're going to put this out as the first single, and Serafino, the label head, is just brilliant at these things. And he said, I know what you're saying. I wanted to go with like a 3.5 minute rocker. He said, I think this is the best choice. And it kind of set things up, and then it gave people a better, it showed that it was going to be more than just the 3.5 minute rock songs. It's more of a throwback to it's an album cut.
Absolutely. And your second single is Rise from the Fire. I notice you stare away from telling exactly what the song's about, but that's fine. Some artists don't like to do that. They want people to interpret things for themselves. So I'm going to take an interpretation and say, this is us coming out of the pandemic.
Yes. And you notice that it's the last song on the record.
Yeah, that's rare to release that.
If you hearken back to the first thing you hear on the record, that intro song, I know you didn't ask me about that one, but it ties in because, yes, Rise from the Fire is us coming out, rising from the fire, literally. And the first song was talking about, music will heal what isolation has destroyed. Come together. That's a song that a lot of people almost a lot of my friends specifically suggested is, oh, you have to do a cover song on the record, because every band has a cover on their debut, because it gives the listener something that they can latch on to, they aren't familiar with. And so actually 2 nights before I recorded the vocals for that song, I rewrote all the lyrics. I had seen someone mention in an interview, and it's a daily email subscription I had, and they were talking about the phrase "come together" came up in this discussion about the pandemic. And I thought, that's what I want to do. I want to use music as this conduit to bring people back together. And the music for that I had written years ago, like 6-7 years ago, when Dennis was looking for something different to open the show with. And I thought, I'll write this little snippet, 1.5 minutes long, of just triumphant chords with a big major key melody and with a 3-part harmony vocal. And I just got him on a bad day, I think, and he just kind of listened to it. But I love that it starts the record, and there's a big focus on harmony vocals, and Jeff Soto is, of course, a big part of that.
And I was just going to bring up Jeff Scott Soto doing a lot of the backing vocals on the album. Were you guys familiar with each other prior to coming onto the Frontiers label?
We've been friends for about 10 years, and his voice is, unmistakably powerful and huge. And I could go on with just stories about him for another half hour, but with his singing. But I have sang, he's got this big, wide voice, and mine's more piercing laser on top. So the last couple of albums he's done, he's asked me we'll come over, and it's usually several Moscow Mules later. It's like, come sing some high notes now. And so I'll go into his studio and I'll sing all the high stuff. And so when this came up, I said, hey, I'd love to have you. And he said, of course, I'd love to. And he's good friends with Alessandro, so it all made sense. So each song has, I'm singing lead, of course, in every song, but I'm also singing some of the backing vocals. Alessandro's in there. Jeff is in there, but mostly what you hear is Jeff, because his voice is just so damn big and rich.
You also have a guest appearance by Dennis Deyoung playing a keyboard solo on Take My Hand. He didn't want to sing on this one?
We were on the phone talking about something unrelated, and I was trying to, get my courage up. And I said, hey, I'm in the middle of this recording project. And I said, what's your rate for a backing vocal or a keyboard solo and something? And he said, August, let's just take it out of the money you didn't get to make this year working with me, because of course we didn't tour at all. And so I said, I'd love to have you play a solo on this track. And it's because it's very 70s feel. And it's I think he did several people have commented, it's kind of like a crystal ball type of solo. And he told me when he sent it back, he said, this is very much me. I hope this is what you wanted. I said, this is exactly what I wanted. It's got his sound that he's known for, and he digs in, and it's a great solo. And a personal thrill, of course, and a victory to have him on my record, where when I first joined the band, I was pushing him about doing a recording because I wanted to be on an album with him. And he was hesitant for years, because he would say, August, what is this, a hobby for me? I'm going to put out a record and it's going to sell 3,000 copies. When back in the day, it would sell 30,000 copies in the first hour. I said, that ship has sailed, come sail away. Of course, thrilled to have done a couple of albums with him, but to have him on mine was a crowning achievement. How
did you get the gig with Dennis's touring band?
That I'd mentioned being in a Styx tribute band, and I think it was 6 years after our last gig, because I'm a very early adopter of technology. I digitized some of the VHS tapes that we had from one of our last shows, where someone's girlfriend had set up a camera kind of thing, and the video is very distant, but the audio is crystal clear. So I put up, I think, about 6 songs. 2 days later, I got a call from Danny Wilde from the Rembrandts about doing something together. And I'm like, this is really a thing. And that went nowhere, by the way, but it was still fun. And then 2 months later, turns out Dennis's son, who's our lighting director, is a bit of an insomniac. And he was up one night real late, and it was not too long after the whole Arnell thing with Journey. And so Matt Deyoung, he's typing on, Filipino Styx tribute singer, and of course the YouTube rabbit hole on everything on the side. Who knows how much later than that, he finds some videos of mine, and he called Dennis at like 12:30 at night, and Dennis was like, there better be blood. No one calls me this late, And he said, you got to go downstairs right now and see this video. And Dennis loved it. And so the next day I got a call from his manager, talked for about 45 minutes, and I said, well, what happens next? He said, well, I'll talk to Dennis, and if he's interested, you'll hear from him. And so the next morning at like 10 o'clock in the morning or whatnot, my daughter was like, And I was like, Dennis, somebody on the phone? And I was like, no way. I'm great. Because August is Dennis Deyoung. I'm like, no fucking way. And, we talked for about an hour and this was December 22nd. Yes, I remember it well. But, he said, well, I'm thinking about making some changes and, how soon can you come up here? He said, I see what you're doing on these videos. I see you're a guitar player, you're a performer, you're a singer, but I don't trust what I see. I got to have it sit on the piano bench with me and can we make a sound together? So I told him, look, that's the only band I've ever sang lead in. That's 6 years ago. I've got, it's 2 or 3 days before Christmas. I got to get myself prepped, right? And he said, well, okay, I get it. He said, well, what's, you got plans for New Year's? I said, actually, I do. He said, when are you back? I said, on the 2nd. He goes, can you be here on the 3rd? Sent me a ticket. And so I'm driving everyone in the house insane with nothing but Styx music, me singing 6, 8 hours a day, trying to get my chops up. And it was crazy. I know we're going to dig too much on this, but my first impression, when he picks me up and pulls up in front of the hotel, in his Mercedes, and the trunk opens up. It's, January 3rd. It's freezing in Chicago. I go out there and put my guitar in the trunk and open the door. I'm like, good morning. And he goes, we'll see about that. He's got a very sarcastic sense of humor. And I think he gets a bad rap for that sometimes because it can appear arrogant. He's super intelligent and super sarcastic, which is a combination that can go awry sometimes. But in a nutshell, we talked for a little bit, went downstairs. It's 10:30 in the morning, which is, of course, 8:30 for me in LA time. Nobody sings at 8:30 in the morning. Dennis sounds exactly the same any time of day. It's uncanny. I call him a freak of nature, and he said I prefer anomaly. But we sat at the piano bench, and he starts playing Lady, and in my head I'm going, it sounds just like the record. He's the guy. And coming to the chorus, he goes, you ready? I'm like, man. And I sang like this, and he just stops and looks at me, and he's just like, you want to try that again? I'm like, yeah, can we? The second time wasn't much better. And he jumps up from the piano, and he's behind me, and he puts his hands on my shoulders, and I'm waiting for the sword, to be beheaded. And he just says, look, he says, I know you're nervous. I know you don't see me the way I see me. And I said, you have no idea. I don't want to totally fanboy out, but I was pretty starstruck, And he said, but I know you can do this. He said, listen, let's go upstairs. Let's get a coffee. Let's just talk for a bit. After that, we went back downstairs. Third time was the charm. It sounded really nice together. And we just ran with the ball after that and started, we did about, we did all the audition songs. And then, of course, I'd been in a Styx tribute band, and I'm a huge Styx fan. This one, we just started having a ball with it. And it was that easy. And then 2 weeks from that day, we had our first gig, and it was just Dennis, me, and Jimmy Leahy, who had been in Dennis's band about 4 years before that. He's my best friend in the band. We met each other. I flew into St. Louis. It was an acoustic show, just the three of us, but it was an arena show. So it was 17,000 people. I was supposed to meet Jimmy that morning and rehearse for 3 hours. And he called me at 7:30 in the morning. He's like, brother, my flight's going to be 2.5 hours late. I'll see you in the green room. I'm like, great. But we met in the lobby. We were wearing the same boots. We had the same phone with the same size. He has 2 boys. I have 2 girls. It was just fast friends from that moment on. And he is featured on my song, Matter of Yesterday. He plays acoustic guitars on that and did a brilliant job. He even came up with his own tuning for the song.
Awesome.
I love him.
Do you see Zadra as a touring band at some point? It's mostly made up of studio guys.
It's not a band per se, and you're absolutely right. And would I love to tour behind it? Absolutely. And with the musical landscape is very different in the last several years, and that was even before the pandemic kicked in. A lot of the Frontiers bands are more recording projects, and it is what it is. And I think they just put a lot of material together, and throw a lot of artists out there in hopes that something will get traction. And then if it does, maybe they'll put some resources behind it. But it may just be a matter of me putting together some local guys and doing a show at the Whiskey, kind of thing. But I would love to have this music performed live.
You mentioned that you were in a Styx tribute band. You're also in a Boston/Journey tribute band, correct?
You could say that. I bristle slightly at it only because in the Boston band, it's Tommy DiCarlo from Boston.
Right.
he's singing, and and then in the Journey segment of I mentioned Rudy Cardenas earlier from Waiting for Monday. He and I had done a Journey tribute band years ago, and he does a lot of session work, and he just got back from almost 2 months in the UK doing a classic rock show. He's a tremendous singer, but in this thing, it's the same backing band, and then we start with Journey, and we do anywhere from 45 to 75 minutes of that, have a quick intermission, switch singers. Tommy comes out, we do a set of Boston, and it's great. Those are, that's peanut butter and jelly for me. Boston and Journey together.
Right. Boston's the area I'm from. Tommy DeCarlo's from up north from where I'm at. I mean,
Utica. We played there recently.
Big band from around here. You mentioned Waiting for Monday. You guys put out an album together in 2020. Do you have new material planned?
We do, and some of it has begun. We're at least we've demoed a lot of things. I don't have a timeline at this point today. I don't have a timeline to offer you, but I would guess probably it'll be a 2023 release.
Okay.
What else was I just going to say? Shoot. Oh, this is kind of not really that exciting to you, but I mean, not to any of the listeners, but I did make a note. You're Cape Cod, Massachusetts, and I have to say, I have so many wonderful friends from Massachusetts, and I'm sure you're familiar with the term of endearment, massholes.
Oh yeah.
And I didn't know that was a term of endearment at first, but I just, for some reason, I had an immediate connection with people from Massachusetts and people from Sweden. They'd be just instant friends for me. So I knew we would get along great.
Well, down in Cape Cod, it's rich massholes.
Rich massholes.
Unfortunately, I'm not one of them.
I was saying, can I get a loan?
So what else do you have going on? Dennis isn't touring right now, and he's not making any albums allegedly. And
correct.
What do you got going on besides this?
Since the pandemic started, you may not know this, third week of March, I think it was 2020, I was already getting a little stir crazy, and I said, you know what? People are doing some live stream things. Let me just grab an acoustic guitar and I'll turn on the Facebook Live and see what happens. And several hundred people tuned in. I played like 11 songs in my sweats and just having real casual. And I've done 88 weeks of that. Anytime, every single Friday except for 2 that if I haven't been on the road with the Boston Journey thing, or it wasn't New Year's Eve, I played Christmas Eve. I've done a show for people, and it's been 2 to 3 hours of me singing some original stuff, mostly classic rock, some requests, and I call it acoustified classics. And it's the acoustic happy hour hang. And I didn't want to make it a performance. It's more like you're in my living room on a Friday. I make mistakes. I start over. I forget lyrics. And it's very casual. But the acronym there is AHHH. The sound is ah. So it was a very happy accent. The first thing you hear on the album is ah, right, with the 3-part harmony. And so that was kind of fun. Dennis told me once, he goes, I've watched your show a few times. You're very brave.
Well, you don't see the people watching you, so it's good.
True.
Well, the album is Guiding Star. It's out now. It's a fantastic classic rock based record. They call it adult oriented rock today. I would encourage anyone to check it out. And thanks for taking the time to come on the podcast today.
Thank you very much, George. It's been a pleasure, and I appreciate your support of music, brother. Be well.
Once again, I want to thank August Zadra for appearing on the Rock is George podcast. Be sure to check out his debut album, Guiding Light, under the moniker Zadra. And while you're at it, head over to his Facebook page, August Zadra Music, and check out his acoustic happy hours. I want to thank Dustin Hardman of Hardman Promotions and Frontiers Records for making this interview possible. And of course, you, the listeners. You've been great. I've been George Dionne, and I'll see you again soon.